Tony was in the woods last week with a few of his friends, and they were with this guy that was new from school, who claimed to know all about black magic. Tony and his friends didn't take him seriously. The guy was called Gerald. Gerald had asked Tony did he know much about black magic, and Tony said, trying to keep a straight face, "Oh yeah, I could write a book on it." His friends knew he was being sarcastic. A few nights later, Tony was sitting down watching TV when he had spotted something on the ground that hadn't been there before. He was trying to figure out how it got there. It seemed to be a book. The cover was just plain, and the book didn't seem to have any title. He began to start reading it. He read, "I was just sitting down, relaxing, reading, when I started hearing weird sounds, but I didn't know which direction they were coming from. It just seemed like there was a weird sound in my ears. Then suddenly the lights went out for a second and came back on again." Tony felt a shiver run up his spine as the lights in his living room had just gone out the second he had read that the light had gone out, and then the light came back on again, just like written in the book. He began to read on. He read, "I was wondering what was happening. I felt weird, but I didn't know why. I couldn't explain what was happening. Then suddenly a light entered the room." Tony was freaking out at this stage, as there was a light entered the room after he read about it happening in the book. He had decided to just shut the book and forget about it, but his curiosity was getting the better of him, so he read on. He regretted reading it as soon as he read the sentence, "Gerald walked into my room and went to attack me." Tony knew martial arts, so was ready for him and threw him over his shoulder. Gerald hit his head off an ornament and blood poured from him. Tony knew he had killed him. Tony knew it was self-defense, so had decided to call the police. But before he rang, he saw a page on the floor. He read what was written on it. "Gerald will come back to life and possess your body." Tony turned around, and without even being able to react, was possessed by Gerald. And then Gerald spoke in Tony's body. "Now, Tony, you will be able to write a book all about black magic."
Vamos a jugar en el 43.
I had a very tragic event happen in my home years and years ago. I was left a mansion in an estate in the middle of the country, and trust me, it was a very beautiful, mystical place. You could see the history written all over it. But one day I had a falling out with a man. That man was my uncle. He was left money, but that's it. But you see, he wanted to claim some of the land around the mansion, and no matter how many times I told him that none of the land was his, he wasn't having it. One night I eventually called a truce, but in reality I had planned on murdering him, which I did. I poisoned his wine and hid him down in the wine cellar. I tied him up to the wall with shackles to make the most of the space and built bricks around him to suit the rest of the wall. I tried to do it perfectly, whereas people would think it was just a part of the wall. For years and years I felt an eerie atmosphere in the house, and I just put it down to my nerves over what I did. Thankfully, he didn't seem to haunt the place like you'd see in some spooky houses, where paintings would float along the air, etc. One night I brought a beautiful lady I met down in the village home for dinner. We were enjoying the dinner, but she didn't really like the wine I chose. I asked her to choose one below in the cellar, proud of my collection of wines over the years. I must have collected hundreds of bottles of wine. The girl went down to the cellar and was in awe with all the different wines I had on display. I was standing back wondering what she would choose. Suddenly I noticed something strange when she handed me a bottle that stood to hairs on the back of my neck. It was the same brand of wine I used to poison my uncle. It wasn't the same bottle, of course, but the exact same brand. She gave me a smile and there was something in her eyes. Had she known that my uncle had been poisoned by me using this brand? Was she just playing a sick game with me before calling the police? Was she the police? All different questions swam around in my head until I realized something was moving. It didn't make a sound, but it was definitely moving. I panicked, but couldn't let her notice the fear. She'd turn around if she noticed. I had fear over what was happening before me, behind her. What I was seeing with my own eyes, but what I could not make any sense of. What I saw was a brick move, and my uncle's huge eye stared out at me. I remember he had lost an eye in the war, but I hadn't seen that eye for years, not since the day I killed him. I told the girl we should go up to finish our meal. It will be getting cold. She gave me a quizzitive look, as she knew we had practically finished our dinner already. Suddenly she turned around and screamed when she saw my uncle's eyes staring right at her from the wall. I didn't know what was happening. How could my uncle be alive? I had to stop her screaming. I had to stop her screaming. It kept getting louder and louder, so I grabbed the bottle and smashed it over her head. As she fell to the ground, my uncle burst through the wall and looked at me sadistically and said, "That girl could have chosen any bottle out of your huge collection, but will I tell you why she chose that one? Because I summoned her, here to take her soul, to bring me back to life." Sophie was watching the news when she thought she heard someone in her hall. She put the TV off and went out and checked to see was anyone in there. Suddenly she jumped when she looked up her stairs and saw a figure duck into one of the rooms. She went back into the living room and rang the police straight away. She was scared an awful lot knowing in her town there was a serial killer attacking women in their own homes. This week so far, there were 2 murders, and the police knew that there was a high probability it was the killer in her home, so they arrived fast. There was a knock on the door, and the policeman went in and looked around to see was the man still upstairs, but he had noticed a window open, and he must have jumped onto a tree near it and climbed down to make an escape. The police officer told Sophie what he had seen and took a statement from her. He told her he would take another look around, but do not worry, as there were 2 police officers outside her driveway in a car watching her house. When Sophie was alone, she had an idea. She had an app on her phone that filmed her door whenever there was movement, even if anyone didn't know. She had realised the intruder might not have even been near the door, but she gave it a try anyway. When she went into her app, she had realised the camera did film someone at her door. She froze when she had realised there was a man at her door who was the exact same policeman who was in her house, looking around, except he had no police uniform on him. Suddenly she ran out to the 2 policemen in the car and had seen that both their throats were slit and one of them had their police jacket and hat taken from them. She heard a noise and turned around. When she turned around, she saw the man who was posing as a policeman. He smiled and said, "You should have checked your app before you let a stranger in your house." Then he lifted up his gun and shot Sophie in the head.